Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal of the window and stared out at the huge space station, spinning slowly in front of them. The station was bigger than any city on Earth, made of silver metal that caught the light from distant stars. For 3 long months he and his crew had been waiting here in their ship, hoping for good news that might never come. They should have told us by now, said Admiral Lisa Kane as she walked back and forth behind him. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and the lines on her face showed how worried she was. She had spent 30 years building Earth's first fleet of spaceships, and now everything depended on what the aliens would decide about humans. Jake turned away from the window and looked at his crew. They were all good people who had worked hard to get here. Communications Officer Ben Taylor sat at his desk, checking and rechecking the radio equipment. He was only 25, but already one of the best at his job. Dr. Maya Rodriguez stood near her science station, reading data about the different alien species they might meet today. She had studied alien life for 10 years, even though no human had ever seen a real alien until 5 years ago. The big screen in front of them suddenly lit up with bright colors. Jake felt his heart beat faster as an alien face appeared on the screen. It was tall and made of what looked like blue crystal, with no mouth but eyes that glowed like small suns. Behind the crystal alien stood many others, some that looked like giant lizards, others that seemed to be made of light itself, and strange creatures with tentacles instead of arms, humans of the planet Earth. The crystal alien said in a voice that sounded like music and thunder at the same time, I am High Counselor Vexar of the Galactic Council. We have spent many days talking about your people and your request to join us among the stars. Jake held his breath. This was the moment that would decide if humans could travel to other worlds and meet alien friends, or if they would be trapped forever in their own solar system. We have studied your history very carefully, Vexar continued. We have seen your wars, your violence, and the way you treat your own planet. We have watched how you fight with each other over small pieces of land and different ideas about how to live. The alien paused, and Jake could see other aliens nodding behind him. The lizard-like creatures seemed especially upset, their scales changing color as they moved. Your species has been judged as too dangerous for civilized space, Vexar said finally. You humans fight too much. You destroy too much. You cannot be trusted to live peacefully with other species who have learned to solve problems without violence. Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Around the bridge, his crew looked shocked and angry. Therefore, the alien continued, the Galactic Council has decided that humans must stay in their own solar system. You are forbidden from traveling beyond the orbit of your planet Neptune. Any human ship found in deep space will be considered an act of war against all civilized species. The screen went dark, leaving the bridge in silence, except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Ben Taylor looked up from his communication station, his young face pale and upset. Captain, we're getting messages from Earth. The news is already spreading everywhere. They're calling us the rejected species on all the networks. Dr. Maya Rodriguez shook her head slowly. 60 years, she said quietly. 60 years of preparing for this day. We learned their languages, studied their cultures, created programs to help different Species understand each other, all of it. Was for nothing. Jake walked over to his captain's chair and sat down heavily. He had been in Earth Space Force for 15 years, and he had always dreamed of the day when humans would join the great community of space-traveling species. He had imagined visiting alien worlds, learning about different forms of life, and showing the aliens that humans could be peaceful and helpful neighbors. Admiral Kane stopped pacing and looked at him with tired eyes. What do we do now, Captain? Do we just go home and give up on the stars forever? Around the bridge, the crew waited for his answer. Jake thought about all the work they had done to get here. He thought about the children on Earth who dreamed of becoming space explorers. He thought about all the wonders of the universe that humans would never see, because a group of aliens had decided they were too violent. But then he thought about something else. He remembered why he had become a space explorer in the first place. It was not because he wanted approval from aliens. It was because he believed humans had something special to offer the universe, something that no other species had. No, Jake said quietly, then louder so everyone could hear him. No, we don't give up. He stood up and looked at each member of his crew. They want to see what humans are really like when they're pushed into a corner. They want to see how we react when someone tells us we're not good enough. Well, they're about to find out. Ben Taylor looked confused. But Captain, if we leave the solar system, they said it would be an act of war. I'm not talking about starting a fight, Jake replied. I'm talking about proving them wrong. They think we're too violent to be civilized. They think we only know how to destroy things. Let's show them what humans do when someone really needs help. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. Slowly, the galaxy is a big place. Captain, there are probably species out there who need help, who are in trouble, and have nowhere to turn. Exactly. Jake said, maybe the Galactic Council is happy to sit in their fancy station and make rules about who deserves to travel in space. But I bet there are people out there who don't care about rules when their lives are in danger. Admiral Kane smiled for the first time since they had received the bad news. You want to become space heroes, help people who can't help themselves. I want to show the universe what humanity really stands for, Jake said, not the violence they're so worried about, but the part of us that never gives up on people who need help, the part that runs toward danger instead of away from it. The crew was beginning to look excited instead of defeated. Jake could see the hope returning to their faces. Ben, send a message back to Earth, Jake ordered. Tell them we're not coming home yet. Tell them we're going to stay out here and wait for someone who needs us. Maya, start scanning for any signs of trouble in nearby star systems. If there are people out there who need help, we're going to find them. Lisa, have the engine room prepare the ship for long-range patrol. We might be out here for a while. As his crew rushed to follow his orders, Jake looked back out the window at the alien space station. Somewhere in there, the Galactic Council was probably celebrating their decision to keep the dangerous humans locked away. In their own solar system, they had no idea that they had just created exactly the kind of enemy they were afraid of. Not because humans were violent, but because humans never knew when to quit. Jake Morrison had spent his whole life preparing to explore the stars as a friend and ally to alien species. Now he would explore them as something much more dangerous, a human being who had been told he could not help people who needed it. The aliens thought they knew what humans were capable of when they were angry. They were about to learn what humans could do when they had something to prove. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council told humanity to stay away from the stars. Back on Earth, people had given up their dreams of visiting other worlds. The government stopped building big spaceships and focused on making bases on the Moon and Mars instead. Most people try to forget that aliens even existed, but Captain Jake Morrison was not like most people. He kept his ship, the Defiant, flying at the edge of the solar system with a small crew of volunteers. They all believed that someday someone out there would need their help. Chief Engineer Carl Thompson was working in the engine room when the ship's computer started making loud warning sounds. He was a big man with strong hands, and he had been fixing spaceships for 20 years. The sounds coming from his machines were not normal. Captain Morrison to the bridge, he called over the radio. We've got something strange happening with our long-range sensors. Jake ran to the bridge where navigation specialist Amy Collins was already at her station. Amy was one of the best pilots in Earth Space Force, and she could fly through asteroid fields that would scare other pilots. Right now she looked very worried. Captain, you need to see this, Amy said, pointing at her screen. There's something big coming toward us from the direction of the star Vega. I mean really big. Jake looked at the screen and felt his blood turn cold. The object moving toward them was larger than Earth's moon, but it did not look like any spaceship he had ever seen. It was twisted and strange, like someone had mixed living things with metal and machines. Parts of it seemed to move and change shape as he watched. How big? Jake asked. Maybe 3,000 km across, Amy replied. And Captain, there are smaller ships running away from it. Lots of them. On the screen, Jake could see dozens of spaceships fleeing from the giant object. Even from far away, he could tell these were not human ships. They had the smooth, elegant design that the Galactic Council species used. Communications Officer Danny Kim suddenly looked up from his radio station. Danny was young and smart, and he had learned to speak several alien languages during their time waiting at the edge of the solar system. Captain, we're getting a distress call, Danny said, his voice shaking. It's from the Zelari fleet. They're asking for help from any ship in the area. Jake remembered the Zelari from the council meeting. They were the proud lizard-like aliens who had seemed especially upset about letting humans into space. Now they were running for their lives and asking anyone for help. Dr. Kate Williams looked up from her science station. Kate was brilliant and had studied physics at the best schools on Earth. She had volunteered to stay on the ship because she believed humans had something important to offer the galaxy. Captain, I'm reading some very strange energy patterns around that big object. Kate said, it's bending space and time around itself. Whatever it is, it's not from our galaxy. The radio crackled with a voice speaking in the Zelari language. Danny quickly translated what the alien was saying. This is Fleet Commander Jack Tai of the Zelari Defense Force. We are under attack by an unknown entity from outside our galaxy. Our weapons cannot hurt it. If there is anyone listening who cares about life in this galaxy, please help us. Jake stared at the screen where the giant object was slowly catching up to the fleeing alien ships. Every few minutes, one of the council ships would disappear, absorbed into the massive thing that was chasing them. Sir, Amy said quietly, the nearest galactic council reinforcements are 3 days away. Those ships won't last 3 hours at the rate they're being caught, Jake thought. About the meeting 6 months ago, he remembered how the aliens had looked at humans with disgust and fear. They had called humans too violent and dangerous to be trusted in civilized space. They had banned humanity from the stars and left them alone in their solar system. Now those same aliens were about to die, and the only help nearby was the ship, full of humans they had rejected. Carl Thompson's voice came over the radio from the engine room. Captain, I can push our engines harder than they were designed to go. We can reach those ships in 2 hours if we burn everything we have. But Sir, Danny Kim said if we leave the solar system, the council said it would be an act of war. Cal looked around at his crew. These were good people who had stayed with him when everyone else gave up. They believed in helping others even when those others did not want their help. Dr. Williams was studying the readings from the alien ships. Captain, whatever that thing is, it's not just destroying the ships, it's taking them, absorbing them. I think it might be harvesting the crews for something. The thought of living beings trapped inside that nightmare made Jake's decision easy. He had not become a space captain to worry about politics or what aliens thought of humans. He had become a captain to help people who needed it. All hands prepare for emergency speed, Jake announced over the ship's radio system. We're going to help those ships, but Captain, Amy said, we don't know what that thing is or how to fight it. We might just be flying to our deaths. Maybe, Jake replied, but we'll be flying toward people who need help. That's what humans do. Danny Kim opened a communication channel to the Zilari Fleet Commander Jackie. This is Captain Morrison of the human ship Defiant. We are coming to assist you. There was a long pause before the Zilari commander replied. When he did, his voice sounded shocked and grateful. Human ship, you must stay away. This entity is beyond anything we have ever faced. Your primitive weapons cannot help us, and you will only die with us. Commander, Jake said into the radio. With respect, you don't know much about human weapons or about human stubbornness. Carl Thompson had the engines running at maximum power. Now, the Defiant was moving faster than it had ever moved before, racing through space toward the battle between the alien fleet and the mysterious invader. Kate, what can you tell me about that thing? Jake asked. Dr. Williams studied her instruments carefully. It's definitely alive, but also mechanical, like someone crossed a giant sea creature with a spaceship. And, Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures that suggest it has absorbed other ships before, maybe hundreds of them. Absorbed how? I think it breaks them apart and uses the pieces to make itself bigger and stronger. The crews, I don't know what happens to them. Jake felt angry thinking about all the people who might be trapped inside that monster. How do we fight something like that? I'm not sure we can, Kate admitted. Our weapons were designed to fight other spaceships, not living mountains. Then we'll have to get creative, Jake said. Carl, can you modify our weapons to do more damage? The engineer's voice came back over the radio. I've been thinking about that. Captain, what if we don't try to destroy it? What if we try to hurt it instead? What do you mean? Well, if it's alive, Maybe it can feel pain. Maybe we can make it decide that we're more trouble than we're worth. It was a crazy idea. But Jake had learned that crazy ideas sometimes worked when normal ones failed. Do it. Modify everything we have. As the Defiant raced toward the battle, Jake watched more alien ships disappear into the massive entity. Each time a ship was absorbed, the thing seemed to get a little bigger and move a little faster. Captain Danny Kim said, "I'm getting more distress calls from other council species. Word is spreading that something is attacking ships near our solar system. Let them know we're here." Jake replied, "Let them know that the humans they rejected are the ones trying to save their people." Amy Collins looked at her navigation screen. 30 minutes to contact Captain. Whatever we're going to do, we better figure it out fast. Jake Morrison had dreamed of meeting aliens and exploring the galaxy as a friend and ally. Instead, he was about to face something that might destroy every living thing it touched. But as he looked at his crew preparing for a battle they might not survive, he felt proud. This was what humans were really like, not the violent savages the council feared, but people who would risk everything to help others, even others who had rejected them. The Defiant flew toward the unknown, carrying the hopes of species who had never given humanity a chance. The thing called itself the Void Collective, and it had been eating entire galaxies long before humans had even learned to make fire. As the Defiant got closer to the battle, Captain Jake Morrison received information from the fleeing Zelari ships that made his blood run cold. Dr. Kate Williams studied the data while Chief Engineer Carl Thompson worked to make their weapons stronger. Captain Kate said, her voice shaking, "This thing doesn't just destroy civilizations, it eats them. It has been moving from galaxy to galaxy for millions of years, consuming everything in its path." The alien entity was like something from a nightmare. It looked like a twisted mix of living flesh and dark metal, with parts that moved and changed like a giant sea creature. Long tentacles the size of warships reached out from its body, grabbing at the fleeing council ships. Every time it caught one, the ship disappeared into its massive form. "They rejected us because they thought we were too violent," muttered Weapons Officer Tony Garcia as he prepared their plasma cannons for battle. Tony was a tough man who had grown up in the rough parts of Earth cities. "Maybe violent is exactly what we need right now, Fleet." Commander Jack Dye's voice crackled through their radio. "Human vessel, you must turn back now. Our most advanced weapons barely scratch its surface. Your simple technology cannot possibly hurt this thing." Commander, Jake interrupted. "You don't know much about human technology, and you definitely don't know about human stubbornness." The battle was terrible to watch. The Void Collective sent out smaller ships that looked like they were made of the same living metal as the main body. These bio ships swarmed around the Defiant like angry insects, trying to tear it apart with claws and energy beams. But Carl Thompson had spent months changing their engines and weapons based on ideas that the council species had said were impossible. Their simple kinetic weapons, which the aliens thought were too primitive, turned out to work very well against the creature's living armor. Navigation specialist Amy Collins flew the ship ways that would have been suicide with any other pilot. She twisted and turned between the entity's huge tentacles, while Tony Garcia aimed at what Kate Williams had identified as nerve centers every time they hit one of these spots. Part of the creature would shake and pull back. It's learning from us, Dr. Williams warned. Every attack we use, it figures out how to defend against it faster, but humans had always been good at learning too. When their normal tactics stopped working, Jake Morrison ordered something that no civilized species had ever tried. He wanted to attack the creature's brain directly, using their ship as a weapon. You want to crash into that thing, Carl? Thompson's voice was high with shock. Not crash, Jake replied. Burrow, Kate. Can we survive inside that creature long enough to reach its central nervous system? The radiation alone should kill us in minutes, she replied, then paused to think. But if we redirect our life support systems through the quantum shielding? It was insane. It was impossible. It was perfectly human. The Defiant turned away from the smaller biochips and flew straight at the main body of the Void Collective. The creature's surface was covered with what looked like mouths full of metal teeth, opening and closing as if it was trying to eat space itself. All power to forward shields, Jake ordered. Carl, I need everything you can give me. The engineer's voice came back steady and determined. You've got it, Captain. If we're going to do something crazy, we might as well do it right. The ship hit the creature's surface and kept going. Instead of bouncing off or being destroyed, the Defiant pushed through layers of living tissue and mechanical parts. The hull groaned under the pressure, and strange organic matter tried to grow over their windows. We're inside, Amy Collins reported, though she sounded like she could hardly believe it. Captain, this place is horrible, finished Tony Garcia. It's like being inside a giant stomach. The interior of the Void Collective was unlike anything any human had ever seen. Corridors made of living flesh pulsed like veins, and mechanical parts grew out of the walls like metal plants. Worst of all were the sounds, voices crying out in languages from dozens of different species. Captain, Dr. Kate Williams whispered, staring at her instruments in horror. It's not just harvesting ships and technology, it's harvesting minds, every species it has consumed over the millions of years. They're still alive in here, still conscious. The biocrittors around them pulsed with light, and through the ship's sensors, they could hear the mental pain of thousands of civilizations, species that had been absorbed and were now trapped inside the creature. Their knowledge and suffering used to make the collective stronger and smarter. Chief Engineer Carl Thompson worked frantically to keep their systems running as organic matter tried to connect with their ship's hull. The thing is trying to absorb us too. Captain, whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. Tony Garcia had discovered something else that made their situation even worse. Captain, I'm picking up familiar energy signatures. These aren't just random species from other galaxies. Some of these are from our galaxy. The collective has been here before. The truth hit them like a physical blow. The Galactic Council had not just encountered the Void Collective before, they had run away from it, leaving entire sectors of space to be consumed while they saved their most important worlds, and now it had followed them back. Jake Morrison felt cold anger building in his chest. The Council had rejected humanity not because humans were violent, but because they were afraid of anyone who might actually fight back. The aliens wanted to keep their fake peace, even if it meant sacrificing others to monsters. Like this, Danny, he ordered. Communications Officer Kim, can you make contact with those trapped minds? I think so, sir, but the mental trauma from connecting with them, do it. If we're going to kill this thing, we need their help. The connection was painful beyond description. Thousands of voices cried out across the barriers between species, sharing their knowledge of the collective's weaknesses. Among them, Jake heard something that shocked him. The mind of a human colonist from one of the ships that had ignored the Council's restrictions and traveled beyond the solar system years ago, only to be consumed by the entity. Captain Morrison, the human consciousness, whispered through the mental link, is that really you? Are there more humans out here? We're here, Jake replied. Through the connection, tell me how to kill this thing. The core, the trapped human mind said urgently. It fears disruption of its central neural matrix, but you have to do it from the inside, and someone has to stay behind to make sure the explosion reaches the right spot. The message became weaker as the collective's defenses tried to stop their communication, but Jake Morrison understood what needed to be done. To kill the entity, someone had to stay behind and detonate their fusion reactor at the exact center of its brain, disrupting the neural networks that held millions of minds in horrible captivity. It was a suicide mission, but it was also the only way to free all those trapped souls. Captain Amy Collins said quietly, I found the path to the central core, but the route goes through the most dangerous part of this thing. Jake looked around at his crew. These people had followed him into hell because they believed in helping others. Now he had to ask them to make the ultimate sacrifice. Listen up, everyone, he said over the ship's communication system. We knew this might be a one-way trip when we started, but now we know what's at stake. There are millions of minds trapped in here, suffering for eons. We can free them all, but someone has to stay behind. Carl Thompson finished. Captain, we all knew the risks. We're all volunteers here. The escape pods might get some of us out, Kate Williams added, but someone needs to pilot the ship to the core and make sure the reactor explodes in exactly the right place. Jake Morrison felt proud of his crew even as his heart broke. They were facing certain death, but they were more worried about saving others than about their own lives. Take us to the core, Amy, he ordered. Let's go free some minds. The Defiant pushed deeper into the nightmare, carrying the hopes of entire civilizations toward one last desperate chance at freedom. The Defiant had reached the heart of the Void Collective, a huge chamber where billions of nerve pathways came together in a writhing mass of living circuits. Here at the center of the entity, Jake Morrison and his crew faced a choice that would echo through the history of the galaxy. Escape pods are ready, Captain reported Amy Collins, though her voice showed she knew they probably would not make it out in time. Even if they tried to escape, Dr. Kate Williams had finished her calculations. If we blow up the fusion reactor here, the neural shock will spread through the entire organism. Every trapped consciousness will be freed, but the explosion will destroy everything within a 100 km. Jake finished. I know, Chief Engineer Carl Thompson looked up from his control panel. Sir, there might be another way. If we can create a direct link with the absorbed minds, channel their combined willpower through our quantum resonance array, It was theory at best, but the alternative was certain death for billions of thinking beings across the galaxy. Jake Morrison made his decision with the same certainty that had driven humanity to reach for the stars despite being rejected by those who already lived. Among them, all hands prepare for quantum interface, he announced. We're going to free every mind in this thing, and we're going to do it the hard way. The process was more painful than anything any of them had ever experienced. Each crew member had to link their mind directly with thousands of alien consciousnesses, sharing their pain, their memories, their desperate hope for freedom. Communications Officer Danny Kim screamed as he felt the dying thoughts of an entire Zilari colony that had been consumed by the collective decades ago. The young man's body shook as alien memories flooded his mind, memories of families torn apart, children crying for parents who would never come home, warriors who had fought bravely until the very end. Weapons Officer Tony Garcia wept as he experienced the last moments of a peaceful species that had never known war until the collective found them. He felt their confusion and terror as their beautiful cities were absorbed into the living nightmare that now surrounded them. Dr. Kate Williams gasped as she connected with the minds of scientists from a dozen different species, all of them trying desperately to find a way to stop the collective even as they were being consumed by it. Their knowledge flowed into her consciousness like a flood of information that threatened to drive her insane. Amy Collins gripped her control stick so hard her knuckles turned white as she felt the fear of every pilot who had ever tried to escape the collective's grasp. She experienced their final moments over and over again. Their ships failing, their crews screaming, their hope dying as the darkness took them. But through all the pain and horror, they held on because that is what humans did. They held on. When everyone else let go, the quantum resonance built to dangerous levels, and Jake Morrison felt his own consciousness expanding to include every victim of the Void Collective. In that moment of perfect clarity, he understood something that changed everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. The Galactic Council had not rejected humanity because humans were too violent or too primitive. They had rejected humanity because humans refused to accept that some things could not be saved. The Council had encountered the Void Collective before and had chosen to run away, to sacrifice the weak to save the strong. They had built their entire civilization on calculated abandonment and humanity's refusal to abandon anyone, even their enemies, threatened everything they believed about survival. I can see it all, Jake whispered as the mental connection grew stronger. Every species the Council left behind, every world they decided was not worth saving. They've been running from this thing for centuries, always choosing who to sacrifice next. Carl Thompson's voice was strained with effort as he tried to maintain the quantum link. Captain, the resonance is becoming unstable. If we don't release it soon, it will tear the ship apart. But Jake was not ready to let go yet. Through the connection, he could feel the Void Collective's confusion and growing fear. For millions of years it had consumed civilizations that either fought individually or ran away in organized retreat. It had never faced an entire galaxy's worth of minds suddenly united in the desire to be free. Danny, can you feel them? Jake asked. All those trapped minds, there starting to remember who they were before this thing took them. Communications Officer Kim nodded, weakly, blood running from his nose as the mental strain increased. Yes, sir. They're angry, really angry, and they're all focusing on the same thing. The desire to break free. The chamber around them began to shake as the void collective's central nervous system started to malfunction. The billions of nerve pathways that controlled the entity were being overloaded by the sudden awakening of every consciousness it had ever absorbed. Tony Garcia looked at his weapon controls. Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations throughout the creature. Whatever we're doing, it's working. But Sir, Amy Collins warned, the structural integrity of this place is failing. If we stay much longer, we'll be crushed. When it collapses, Jake Morrison faced the hardest decision of his life. They could escape now and hope that the damage they had caused would be enough to kill the collective eventually, or they could stay and make sure the job was finished, knowing that none of them would survive. Through the quantum link, he felt the desperation of millions of trapped minds. They had been prisoners for so long that many had forgotten what freedom felt like. Some had been absorbed so long ago that their species had evolved and died out while they remained conscious in this nightmare. Kate, he said quietly, what happens if we leave now? Will the process continue without us? Dr. Williams checked her readings through tears of pain. I don't know, Captain. The neural cascade has started, but the collective is already adapting. It might find a way to regain control, and if we maintain the link until the quantum resonance reaches critical mass, the neural shock will definitely destroy the entity's consciousness, but the feedback will kill us all. Jake finished. I understand. He looked around at his crew, these brave people who had volunteered to stay at the edge of the solar system when everyone else had given up hope. They were in terrible pain from the mental connection, but none of them had asked to break the link. None of them had suggested running away. I need to tell you all something, Jake said over the ship's communication system. Through this connection, I can see what the galaxy is really like. The Council species are not evil, but they're afraid. They've been running from threats like this for so long that they've forgotten how to fight back. Carl Thompson's voice was weak but determined. So they sacrificed others to save themselves. Yes, and they rejected us because they knew that humans would never accept that kind of compromise. They knew that if humans joined their civilization, we would expect them to save everyone, not just the important ones. Amy Collins managed a painful smile. So they were right to be afraid of us. Yes, but not for the reasons they thought. They were afraid that we would make them better than they are. The quantum resonance was reaching the point where they had to make their final choice, stay and die to free millions of enslaved minds, or escape and hope that others would finish what they had started. All hands, Jake announced. I'm not ordering anyone to stay. Anyone who wants to try the escape pods can go now. Nobody moved toward the escape pods. Captain Danny Kim said with a weak grin, where else are we going to find a more important fight than this one? Besides, Tony Garcia added, someone needs to teach these alien jerks what humans are really capable of when we put our minds to it. Kate Williams nodded agreement. The data from this quantum resonance will change everything we know about consciousness and neural networks, even If we don't survive, this information needs to be preserved. Jake Morrison felt proud and heartbroken at the same time. His crew was choosing to die for people who had rejected them, for civilizations that had never given humanity a chance. Now Kate Williams screamed over the building energy storm. The neural cascade erupted through the collective's consciousness like a cleansing fire. The neural cascade exploded through the void collective, like lightning breaking through dark clouds. Every absorbed mind suddenly remembered who they were, where they came from, and what they had lost. The entity's scream of confusion and pain shattered the walls between dimensions, as millions of years of forced unity dissolved into individual thoughts and free will. Captain Jake Morrison felt the moment when the collective's control broke through the quantum link. He experienced the joy and relief of countless beings as they remembered their own names for the first time in centuries. But he also felt the creature dying around them, its massive form beginning to tear itself apart as it lost the ability to hold so many minds together. The Defiant shook violently as the chamber around them started to collapse. Dr. Kate Williams managed to speak through the pain of maintaining the neural connection. Captain, the cascade is working, but we need to get out of here now. Can we break the link safely? Jake asked. Not without risking the process failing, she replied. Someone needs to maintain the connection until the very end. Through the ship's sensors, they could see the void collective's exterior changing. Parts of it were breaking away and floating free in space. Some of these pieces were actually spaceships that had been absorbed years or decades ago, now freed from the creature's control. Communications Officer Danny Kim looked up from his station, his face pale but determined. Captain, I'm getting signals from some of those freed ships. There are survivors on board. How many? Jake asked. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Species I don't even recognize. Some of these ships are from the other side of the galaxy. The quantum resonance was becoming unstable, but Jake Morrison made a decision that would have surprised no one who knew him. Instead of trying to escape, he ordered his crew to use their remaining power to boost the signals from the freed ships, helping them coordinate their escape from the dying entity. Captain Amy Collins said urgently, if we keep using power for communications, we won't have enough left for our own escape pods. Then we better make sure every one of those ships gets clear before we worry about ourselves, Jake replied. Chief Engineer Carl Thompson worked frantically to keep their systems running as the collective death throes sent waves of energy through its body. Sir, I can give you maybe 5 more minutes before our main power fails. That'll have to be enough, Jake said. Danny, help coordinate the escape routes. Tony, use whatever weapons we have left to clear debris from their path. Weapons Officer Tony Garcia fired their remaining ammunition to destroy chunks of organic matter that were blocking the escape routes for the smaller ships. Captain, some of these freed vessels don't have working engines. They've been part of that thing for so long their systems are barely functional. Then we'll have to help them, Jake decided. And GT, Amy, can you use our tractor beams to pull some of the damaged chips clear? Yes, sir, but that will drain our power even faster. Do it. For the next few minutes, the crew of the Defiant worked to save as many lives as possible while their own ship was slowly being crushed by the collapsing entity around them. They used their tractor beams to pull damaged ships to safety there, communication systems to guide lost vessels to escape routes and there, weapons to clear paths through the debris through the quantum link that was slowly killing them. Jake could feel the gratitude of the beings they were saving. Many of them had been trapped for so long they had given up hope of ever being free. Now they were flying toward open space because a ship full of humans had refused to abandon them. Captain Dr. Williams gasped, "The neural cascade is complete. Every trapped mind has been freed. We can break the connection now." But Jake hesitated through the link. He could sense something else, other creatures like the Void Collective, moving through the darkness between galaxies. This entity had not been alone. There were others out there, and they would eventually find their way to populated space. Kate, can you record what we've learned about these things, how to fight them, how to free the minds they capture? I'm trying, sir, but our data storage is failing. Then we transmit it. Jake decided, send everything we've learned to every ship in communication range. Make sure the galaxy knows how to fight these things. Danny Kim worked to boost their transmission power. Captain, I'm sending our data to the Zellari fleet, but I don't know if they'll believe it. The information about the Council's previous encounters with these entities, it's not going to make them look good. Send it anyway, Jake ordered. The truth needs to be told. As their ship finally began to break apart, Jake Morrison thought about the choice he and his crew had made. They could have escaped, could have saved themselves and left the trapped minds to suffer. Instead, they had chosen to stay and fight to free millions of beings and give the galaxy the knowledge it needed to face future threats. The last thing Jake saw through the quantum link was the moment when the Void Collective's consciousness finally died. The creature that had consumed galaxies for eons simply stopped existing, its massive form breaking apart into harmless debris. Millions of enslaved minds were finally at peace. 3 weeks later, the same chamber where the Galactic Council had rejected humanity was filled with a very different kind of meeting. Survivors from dozens of species filled the station's corridors, their ships still bearing the scars of their long imprisonment. Fleet Commander Jackdye stood at the podium, his scaled hide marked with ritual scars that his people used to honor great sacrifices. The humans could have left us to die, he said, his voice carrying absolute conviction. Their own species was forbidden from our space, declared unworthy of civilization. Yet when we called for help, they answered, High Counselor. Vexar's crystalline form seemed smaller, somehow less imposing than before. The human action was commendable, however. Their disregard for our laws, their violation of the solar system restriction saved every life in this chamber, interrupted Dr. Maya Rodriguez. She was no longer the uncertain scientist who had watched humanity's rejection months earlier. Now she spoke with the authority of someone representing a species that had proven its worth through action rather than words. You want to discuss civilization? Maya continued. Let's talk about how your civilized response to the Void Collective was to run away and hope it would consume someone else first. Admiral Lisa Ka stepped forward with data tablets in her hands. We've reviewed your historical records. The Collective attacked this galaxy 17 times. In the past 1,000 years, every time Your response was the same, strategic. Withdrawal, acceptable losses. Calculated sacrifice. The chamber fell silent as the truth settled over the assembled delegates. Like a heavy blanket, a young human officer that no one had seen before walked into the chamber. He wore the uniform of Earth Space Service, but his face bore scars that suggested he had seen terrible things. "I am Lieutenant Ben Carter," he announced. "I was part of a human colony ship that ignored the Council's restrictions 3 years ago. The Void Collective captured our ship and I have been trapped inside that creature ever since, until Captain Morrison and his crew freed us." The revelation sent shock waves through the assembly. A human had been imprisoned in the entity, had experienced its horrors firsthand. The humans you rejected as too violent spent their last moments making sure that every trapped mind was freed, Carter continued. They died to save beings they had never met, from species that had cast them out of civilized space. High Counselor Vexar's harmonic voice was barely audible. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Admiral Kane replied simply. "We're not asking to join your council. We're not asking for your approval. We're going home to prepare for the next threat, because there's always a next threat." Dr. Rodriguez activated a holographic display showing the solar system. "But when you face something you can't run from, something you can't negotiate with, you know where to find us." As the human delegation prepared to leave, Fleet Commander Jai called out, "Wait, there are many of us who would stand with you, species who are tired of running, tired of calculating which worlds we can afford to lose." Admiral Kane paused at the chamber entrance. "Then come, but understand what you're choosing. We don't promise victory, we don't promise safety, and we definitely don't promise it will be civilized. We only promise that we'll never abandon you, even after we rejected you," Vexar asked quietly. Kane smiled, and for the first time in months it was genuine. "Especially then, that's what it means to be human. The galaxy would never be the same."